Hi everyone, I'm Miss Packwood, and today I'm going to take you guys on a little tour of the world, and with the mindset of looking at religions in terms of their geographic locations. But I also am going to be talking about the world religions from a more philosophical standpoint. So, I know you guys have you've been studying ancient civilizations. You started with Mesopotamia, went on to Egypt, India, China, and in all of these civilizations, there's always been that component of not just their culture, but also their practices. And a lot of times, the practices of a civilization relate to their belief system or their religion. And from the very beginning, we learned that these peoples of these ancient civilizations were more polytheistic, especially when we started with Mesopotamia, Egypt, in ancient Greece, you had Greek mythology where they're, believing in multiple gods and goddesses. And a lot of that was how to explain the mysteries of the natural world, how to explain why things were happening. But as we moved forward and learned more and more about these ancient civilizations, we started learning about Hinduism and Buddhism, which were in South Asia. South Asia mostly being India. And then, of course, as we moved into ancient China, we learned about Taoism, sometimes referred to as Taoism, Confucianism, and also Buddhism, because Buddhism expanded, even though it originated in India, South Asia, it expanded into ancient China. And so that's something that is known as one of the ancient, or as one as the Eastern religions now, Buddhism, along with Confucianism and Taoism. And then as we got into our study of ancient Rome, we learned about Christianity and how it spread from in Judea, what we now refer to as Jerusalem or Israel, and spread all across the Roman Empire. So you guys have kind of seen how these religions, they're all different in these different geographic locations. So I definitely want to kind of look at Google Earth and show you guys how those definitely signify specific regions in terms of their origins. But I also want to be looking at, or I want you guys to think about those religions in a more philosophical standpoint. So I want you to think of the world, think of that, you have a map of the world. I've got a globe back there, but I don't know if that would really help right now. I'm gonna eventually switch to Screencastify so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. But think of, you've got a map of the world, and pretend you can put a little pie with 3 slices on top of that. Like a little pie with 3 slices that can be overlaid on the map of the world. We're gonna be starting our studies by looking first at South Asian traditions. So like I said earlier, India. And as you'll be able to see by comparing the diagram that I'm giving you with a map, that South Asia is definitely referring to the country of India, where Hinduism and Buddhism arose. They started there. We're going to then look at the East Asian religions, and you'll see that in this case we're going to be talking about China and Japan. As I mentioned earlier, Confucianism, Taoism, and Buddhism, Zen form of Buddhism. And then next, the third category, which this is what we're going to spend the most time on, is the Western religions. And this is in the Western piece of the pie. And with this in mind, I tried to emphasize on my little diagram that the western piece of the pie is, it kind of embraces the eastern end of the Mediterranean Sea, including the Arabian Peninsula, which is, if you're familiar with Saudi Arabia, and that's, if you remember, that's where Judaism and Islam, as well as Christianity, were originated. And so we'll take a look at that. But something I want you to think about before we close out this unit on world religions, I want you to think about these religions in these areas more philosophically rather than geographically, in terms of the distinct problem or question that each of these groups tends to focus their attention on. So when it comes to dealing with life, every person is confronted with three basic problems. No matter who you are or when, where you live, each of us is challenged. And this is in the history of time. Each of us is challenged by three different issues. The first is the problem of our own identity. Who am I? Okay, you've often wondered that, I'm sure. What does it mean to be me? In fact, what does it mean to have a self at all? People have answered this question in various ways, but everybody asks it at one time or another, and in one form or another. It's like part of being human is, who am I? Second problem has to do with your relationship to other people. So not only do you ask yourself, who am I, who I am, I also have to wrestle with the question of who are you, and what's our relationship? So not just who am I, but who are you? This is the problem of human relationships. Who are our neighbors? In fact, some of you, when you think of the word neighbor, it might remind you, if you think about religions, in Luke 10, a lawyer is talking with Jesus about how he might inherit eternal life. He knows he must follow the Jewish law and love your neighbor as yourself. And Jesus actually asks him, who is my neighbor? And if you follow that passage, what it comes to is your neighbor is everyone around you. So this is one of the philosophical questions of life, is who is my neighbor? And each of these religions that we've talked about have a way that they think about these questions. Okay, so who am I? Who are our neighbors? Who's your neighbor? What are responsibilities towards them? And I know in my class we talked a lot about Confucianism and how your relationship to other people is almost more important. No, it is more important than your own view of self or your own identity. Like in Mulan, you guys all watched Mulan. It was almost like her culture and the belief system of her culture was saying your relationship to the emperor, your relationship to your mom, your role in your family is more important than your own personal identity. Okay? So that's the Eastern kind of philosophical view of that question of who your relationships to other people. Okay, the third problem, does anyone know what this might be? The third problem concerns your surroundings, your natural environment, the world around you. I have to figure out who I am. I need to understand how I should relate to you and other people. But at some point, I must also encounter the question of, what does it mean to live in this particular world? Why am I here and not somewhere else? And for that matter, what exactly is here? How did the world get started? How does it work? What's it made of? To sum up, we should refer to these three sets of issues as the questions or problems of self, society, and nature. So, when you review these religions, I want you to think about those in terms of their different perspectives on self, their different perspectives on their relationships with other people around them, their neighbors, and how they believe that they're impacted by nature. And this can be a really interesting way to think about these religions. So what I'm going to be doing on the Screencastify is I'm going to be taking you actually to that Western piece of the pie. And we're going to actually look at some landmarks in Jerusalem, which are very significant landmarks, not just for Christianity, but for Islam and Judaism. So, and we're going to talk about why those particular landmarks, what those signify for those particular religions. And I think that you'll find it really interesting to see how close they are to one another, and how they're such significant places for people who follow these religions. And when you're finished with that, I'm going to have you guys complete a chart where you find one of the locations on Google Earth. For example, there's one that's called the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, which is said to be the place where Christ's tomb was. So why is that significant in the religion of Christianity? Why do people like to go and visit that place? And just, you're going to complete a chart where you get to go to the location on Google Earth, and then and you can follow along with me on my Google Earth tour, or you can do it on your own and just kind of, I know in my classes we like to drop the Google guy so we can look around and see what's around us. You can drop your Google person on exactly where little blue dots are. You can see where people have taken pictures, and you can see, explore places that none of us can go right now. A, it's too expensive, and B, a lot of these places are closed to the public because of our current situation. But Google Earth is such a great way for you guys to see and not just talk about these religions and talk about these places, but actually visit them virtually. So I hope you enjoy the tour, and make sure you chart the locations, why they're significant, and what religion those landmarks are showing. Bye.